يحضرون لعملية الغياب. المعادلة اختلفت.
Good afternoon. You're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Lena Tamim, and these are today's top stories. The Lebanese army targets militant posts in the outskirts of the border town of Arsal as Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah claims a major achievement in the battle with jihadists. Yemen's Houthi fighters boycott a dialogue conference in the Saudi capital Riyadh aimed at tackling the lingering crisis as the UN envoy to Yemen calls for an extension of the ceasefire. And Pope Francis canonizes 2 Palestinian nuns during a ceremony at the Vatican. The Lebanese army has targeted militant posts in the outskirts of the northeastern border town of Arsal. The national news agency says the troops targeted militant positions and movements with mortar shells and rocket-propelled grenades to prevent jihadists from infiltrating into Lebanon. On Saturday, Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah claimed a major achievement in the battle with jihadists in the Syrian border town of Kalamoun. The Kalamoun region straddles the Syria-Lebanon border and was a stronghold of rebel forces until a major operation by Syrian regime troops backed by Hezbollah fighters was launched last year. While most of the region was recaptured, opposition militants and jihadists remain entrenched in the area along the porous and ill-defined border. As they withdrew from Arsal, the groups took several dozen Lebanese security forces with them as hostages and remained hidden in the town's outskirts. Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah says his party remains at the heart of the battle for Syria's border Kalamoun region, revealing that 13 Hezbollah fighters have been killed since the offensive began nearly 2 weeks ago. Hezbollah, along with the Syrian army and popular mobilization units, have achieved several victories since the offensive launched, including the seizure of illegal crossings used to smuggle explosives between Lebanon and Syria. In a televised speech, Nasrallah said jihadi militants have also been ousted from several strategic locations, allowing Hezbollah and its allies to link Lebanon's eastern towns to adjacent Syrian villages. He also noted that the seizure of jihadi posts in Kalamoun has helped secure the Damascus-Homs highway and Lebanese border towns, recalling the hundreds of rockets fired by Syrian rebels into Lebanon over the past several years. Nasrallah also dismissed rumors that Hezbollah was trying to get the Lebanese army involved in the Kalamoun battle. Foreign Minister Gibran Bassil has kicked off a tour in South Lebanon where he called on the Lebanese military to assume its responsibility in Arsal. Speaking in the town of Hasbaya, Bassil said the mistakes that were done in Arsal shouldn't reoccur and the cabinet and the army should assume the responsibilities and not become spectators. He said in a statement that the resistance was established due to the failure of the Lebanese state to challenge the Israeli occupation, and we are witnessing the same thing nowadays in the fight against Takfiri groups. Bassil, who is loyal to the Free Patriotic Movement leader MP Michel Aoun, pointed out that Lebanese men were combating the Takfiris and defeating them. Security forces have reportedly deployed across Beirut ahead of an expected demonstration protesting the verdict issued by Lebanon's military court against former minister Michel Smeha. Smeha was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison on Wednesday over transporting explosives from Syria into Lebanon with the intent of carrying out bombings targeting political and religious figures. The Future Bloc attacked the military tribunal over the lenient sentence handed to Smeha, describing the verdict as a joke and saying the court has lost Lebanon's confidence. Several Future Movement officials also publicly criticized the sentence, including former Prime Minister Saad Hariri and Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi. Security services received a tip that a large protest is expected to be staged at the burial site of former Prime Minister Hariri in downtown Beirut. Internal security forces have fanned out across the city, particularly around the neighborhood of Tariq Jdide, to prevent any unrest stemming from the expected protest. A U.S. Special Forces raid in eastern Syria has killed 32 members of the Islamic State jihadist group, including 4 leaders. This is according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which says 3 of the 4 leading officials killed in the raid were from North Africa, but that the Islamic State communications official was from Syria. U.S. officials said about a dozen people were killed in the operation on Friday night, which was conducted by Iraq-based U.S. commandos in order to capture Islamic State oil chief Abu Sayyaf. U.S. President Barack Obama approved the Special Forces operation, a rare use of boots on the ground by the United States, which has fought the jihadists almost entirely from the air. The operation targeted an ISIS compound at Al Amr, one of Syria's largest oil fields, which is located in the eastern Deir ez-Zor province. U.S. Secretary of Defense Ash Carter called the operation a significant blow to ISIS. Best-selling author and UNHCR Goodwill Ambassador Khalid Hosseini has visited Zaatari refugee camp in Jordan this week to meet with Syrian refugees fleeing the conflict. As the conflict enters its 5th year, the situation is getting more desperate for Syrians, some of whom will risk everything and cross dangerous waters to find safety in Europe. Hosseini has met with a group of youth whose main aspiration was to continue their higher education, but were unable to do so due to a lack of financial means and access to institutions.
Many living here at the world's second largest refugee camp had hoped their stay would be temporary. As the war in Syria enters its 5th year, that hope is starting to fade. UNHCR Goodwill Ambassador and best-selling author Khalid Hosseini is on his first trip to Zaatari refugee camp. Since his last visit to the region, the Syrian refugee population has gone up by over 1 million.
My sense is, compared to a year ago, things are markedly worse. The situation in Syria has really unraveled. We're nearing the 4 million refugee mark. 7.5 million people within Syria are displaced. And just talking to people here in the camp, there's little sense that they have hope of going home anytime soon, little sense that this war is coming to an end.
Hosseini met with a group of youth who refused to give up on their aspirations.
Can you, in your own words, just kind of describe to me what it was like to be in Syria?
When listening the helicopter is coming and you wait, I will do it, I will do it, I will do it. After that pump, you will listen. The people will throw where this, but you will see every woman and child and man. It's a death. It's pieces of man. Not man. It's not completely man.
They all know of at least one person who risked their life crossing the sea to Europe.
Syria is becoming a very difficult place to live for families, and they're trying to go someplace where they can restart their lives, where they can have a sense of safety, and sometimes they're forced to make really desperate decisions and undergo these really perilous voyages, as we've seen in the Mediterranean, and sometimes that comes at the cost of great human tragedy.
Can you repeat that?
How many brothers are here with you?
Hosseini went to visit the home of one of the youth, Hamza. He's 20 and has been disabled since birth.
Assalamu alaikum.
Hamza loves theatre, music and languages.
كانت طموحاتي إني أدرس وأكمل دراستي يعني وبدرس جامعة وبخلص وبصير يعني بزنس مان. أنا ما بيأسش يعني في شغلة المقولة هاي بحب أقول لك إياها يعني من فقد الأمل فقد الحياة. يعني أنا هسه يعني وين في دورات وين في هيك عم بسعى لهن وبسجل يعني مش مخلي دورة بالمخيم إلا ماني مسجل بيها.
Part of what we need to realize is that people are not born refugees. People are not born, as war victims. Generally, the people that I met lived in cities. They drove cars. They went to school. They had jobs, and then suddenly the bombs started falling.
Hamza stays busy and hopeful, even if his dreams remain out of reach. For Khalid Hosseini, the determination and resilience of refugees like Hamza will always be an inspiration.
And coming up next, hundreds in Amman attend the hit musical show Mamma Mia. That and more after the break. Welcome back. Yemen's Houthi fighters have boycotted a dialogue conference in the Saudi capital as the country's exiled president opened the 3-day event aimed at tackling the lingering crisis. Yemeni President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi, Prime Minister Khalid Baha, and around 400 delegates gathered in Riyadh, with leading factions including the Sunni Islah Party, socialists, and members of former President Ali Abdullah Saleh's political party. The General People's Congress in attendance. The Houthis, who control large swathes of territory, refused to attend the talks in Saudi Arabia or any other nation involved in the bombing, demanding talks be held in Yemen. Also during the meeting, the United Nations envoy to Yemen, Ismail Ould Sheikh Ahmed, has called on the Saudi-led military coalition and the country's warring parties to extend by 5 more days a ceasefire set to expire this evening. Pope Francis has named 2 Palestinian women as saints in a ceremony in St. Peter's Square, just days after the Vatican formalized its de facto recognition of the State of Palestine. The canonization of Sister Marie-Alphonsine Daniel Ghattaz, founder of the Sisters of the Most Holy Rosary of Jerusalem, and Mariam Bawardi, who founded a Carmelite convent in Bethlehem, was not directly connected with the Vatican's announcement on Wednesday of a new accord with the State of Palestine. But the ceremony, attended by Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and a delegation of senior clergy, including the Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem, Fuad Tual, highlighted the Pope Francis's long-standing drive to help embattled Christian communities in the Middle East. This comes after the Pope met with Abbas for a private visit yesterday, calling him an angel of peace and urging a renewed effort to find peace with Israel. 3 people have been killed in the Afghan capital Kabul in a car bomb targeting a convoy of foreign troops near Kabul's airport. The casualties include 2 civilians and 1 foreign soldier. The Afghan Interior Ministry says at least 2 women were killed and 21 civilians wounded following the explosion near a NATO military installation. The Taliban reportedly claimed responsibility for the blast. Hundreds of Jordanians have attended hit musical Mamma Mia's international show in the capital Amman this week. The tale of a daughter on a mission to discover the identity of her father has captivated millions of people worldwide since the show opened in London's West End in 1999 with music by pop group ABBA. Since then, the show has traveled around the world. The story is set on a Greek island where 20-year-old Sophie decides to figure out who her father is from 3 potential options a few days before her own wedding. The audience sang and danced along with the nearly 60 performers and musicians. The show was a treat for nostalgic ABBA fans. After Dubai and Doha, this was the first time Mamma Mia was staged in the Middle East.
I grew up listening to ABBA, so I'm really close to the show, and I also saw the musical in the very first year of the international tour back in 2004, so I grew very close to it as a teenager, and I just feel like really close to the musical, and I really like to come back as soon as they will possibly ever ask me. So they asked me last year to come back and join and to play the part again, and I jumped at the chance.
Mamma Mia has gone worldwide, everywhere. Everybody understands the story. Everybody takes some bit of the story from Mamma Mia, whether you're young, old, male, female. The males pretend they don't like it, but they actually always end up enjoying it. They always friends and family, they go, oh God, Mamma Mia. The men, they come out dancing and singing more than the females do. But it's amazing to come to a place like Amman and be a place where the show's never been before.
This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our headlines. The Lebanese army targets militant posts in the outskirts of the border town of Arsal, as Hezbollah chief Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah claims a major achievement in the battle with jihadists. Yemen's Houthi fighters boycott a dialogue conference in the Saudi capital, Riyadh, aimed at tackling the lingering crisis, as the UN envoy to Yemen calls for an extension of the ceasefire. And Pope Francis canonizes 2 Palestinian nuns during a ceremony at the Vatican. Those are the news trending this weekend. I'm Linda Tamim, and I'll see you again tomorrow for more. Take care.
كانوا يحضرون لعملية الغياب. المعادلة اختلفت.